So Genshin 5.0 live stream has just occurred, and there is some things that you need to know and be aware of. And there are some changes to Genshin that are very big and certain mistakes you don't want to make. There are a couple big mistakes that are going to happen for 5.0 that if you make these mistakes, there are no coming back from them, and that you need to make the correct decision for you as a player. But there are the correct mathematical decisions and high probability decisions that will actually help you out. And this video goes over some of the high probability things that you need to do. Otherwise, you may end up kicking yourself later on the line. The first change to 5.0 is there is a change to the banner system where they're adding on a capturing radiance thing. This has no real bearing on anything for decision making except for some things on weapon banner summons. If you're summoning on the weapon banner, there is going to be a lower amount of fate points, so this will change the amount of summons you may want to save for things. So if you want to save for that, you can, but this video is not going to go over that. It's mainly going to go over the mistakes you could make. All right, so in the 5.0 live stream, they introduced something called a sanctifying elixir. The sanctifying elixir is going to be a new mechanic that's going to be brought to Genshin, and we're getting a gadget. This gadget will allow us to transmute artifacts, okay? And we have to have a certain amount of artifacts level to do so. When we get this new gadget, we are able to pick up and create an artifact. Now, you're able to create any artifact from any artifact set in the game. There are no limitations on that. You can create a headpiece, a plume, a goblet, a sands, etc. This object is a very, very good object, and it is an insanely powerful gadget. But there is a huge mistake that you can make as a player that will lower the probability of what you're getting. Okay, now if we're looking at these, many people are thinking I'm missing a blank artifact for my blank set, and this would help me get that last artifact for my X set. If that is your initial thing that you are thinking, don't think that way. Stop thinking that way. That is the dangerous line of thinking that will lead you down the path of fuck, I should not have done that. You will feel like that so quickly, it's unbelievable. So please, if you are just missing one artifact out of an artifact set, there is a 80% probability that you fuck this up and you end up spending this on the wrong thing. The reason there is an 80% moderate probability, because there's 5 different kinds of artifacts, there's only one type of artifact you should get. A long time ago, we were able to figure out the artifact distribution rates of artifacts. What this means is that each artifact has a specific chance of dropping a specific main stat. Here are the specific main stats for sands. There is a 26, we'll just say 25 for now. There's a 1 in 5% probability that you get a main stat sands with HP, attack, or defense, and then there's a very small probability of ER or EM. Okay, 10% of each. We'll get into it in a minute. There is a very high probability of getting HP, attack, and defense goblets, but very low percent chance of getting elemental onset goblets, and even lower chance of getting an elemental mastery onset goblet. And then these are again just for the main stats. There's a very high chance of getting HP, attack, and defense, as well as a very low chance of critting an edge. Now, I'm sure if you've played Genshin Impact for a long time, you know these things. But here is the thing that you do not want to do. If you are a player missing a specific artifact, if you are, say, a player missing an attack sands, and you want to get an attack sands for your Arlecchino or something like that on the set, and you've been farming for like a month and a half or 2 months or whatever, and you really want to get it, don't use this system. That is a bad decision to get an attack sands for Arlecchino. However, if you were looking for an elemental mastery sands or an energy recharge sands for like your Hu Tao or your Raiden Shogun or some shit like that, and you were really looking for one out of one artifact set, well, the sands are actually going to be at potentially some lower cost than the goblets. Let's just say half. And if you were going to do the sands at an elemental mastery energy recharge, there is some weight to you being able to use that. But if you're going to get an attack HP or defense sands, well, the likelihood of getting that versus, we'll go down to the goblets again, An on-set goblet. Let's just say you were farming out a Nebulet and you needed to get Nebulet's goblet out of the Mora set. There's only a 5% chance for getting the Hydro Goblet. Luckily, there's a 20% chance or so, or 19, to get an HP Goblet. So that's what most people use. So they go, yeah, nice. But like, if it was a different character, let's just say Hu Tao, and you were trying to get a Pyro on-set goblet on the Crimson Witch set or whatever set you wanted to use, there's only a 5% probability of you getting that artifact. Now, let's just say you're farming out Kinich out of this most recent domain. Well, there's only a 5% chance of you getting that Dendro Cup. You're trying to get Mulani out of the most recent domain. Well, there's only a 5% chance of getting those Hydro Goblets for her. So these are the types of things that you need to be on the lookout for. Because if you were getting, let's just say, one of the Elemental onset goblets, they have the lowest probability in the entire game of being received, except for Elemental Mastery onset goblets. This is the most rare artifact in the game. If you want to know what the most rare artifact in the game looks like, the most rare artifact in Genshin Impact looks like this. You get an Elemental Mastery goblet with both crit rate and crit damage on it. This is the most rare artifact. If you have one of these artifacts that rolls like Elemental Mastery, crit rate, and crit damage, on my whale account, I have quite a few Elemental Mastery, crit rate, crit damage, but as you can see, over the course of 4 years, I don't have a 40 CD, I have like 35. This is the best one I've had, and it was out of the Shuman Autobahn. Out of 4 years of playing Genshin Impact, this is all I really have. And I farm artifact roots, I farm artifacts daily, I farm more artifacts than most people. This is all I got on my whale account. My free-to-play and Battle Pass Vulcan account, I have much better EM onset goblets, but my whale account, I just do not have good shit. So the Elemental Mastery onset goblet is the best thing to pick up out of that, probability-wise. If we go down to the headpieces are a trap. Because if you're gonna get a headpiece, the headpiece you gotta get crit damage with crit rate substat and attack main stat. The probability of getting that is actually significantly better, more than double, I'd say. More than double of getting an elemental onset goblet of a specific reset, or more than quadruple of an EM goblet, right? The different caveat, though, of course, is the Elemental Mastery headpieces. Now, I'm assuming most of you guys were farming a Viridescent Venerer headpiece at one point for your Kazuha, and you realize the pain of trying to get a Viridescent Venerer headpiece for Kazuha, especially one with crit rating, crit damage if you want to do some weird, cool builds. So if you were going to get that, that's a great one. So the artifacts that I would say that you are okay to get out of the new Sanctifying Unction thing, whatever it's called, is the Elemental Onset Goblets for main stats with crit rating, crit damage. The Elemental Mastery Goblets, okay? The Elemental Mastery Headpieces with crit rating, crit damage, only with crit rating, crit damage, mind you. And the Elemental Mastery or Energy Recharge Sands out of the sets. Those are the only ones that you should ever get out of this new artifact system. If you get something else, the probability and resource that you're trying to get has such a higher probability to be received. If you didn't get that, you could be one of those really, really unlucky people. But the second you get that thing out of the artifact exchanger, or when you continuously farm artifacts, you're going to be kicking yourself saying, why didn't I get the more rare artifacts? Why did I do that? Because these resources that we're getting out of the live stream for the Sanctifying Elixir, these things are going to be very limited per patch. And you don't want to use them frivolously. They are probably more rare than crowns for what you can use them for. And they seem like they're gonna be some type of paid resource along with it. So it's not just gonna be fully free. There's gonna be probably one tied to the battle pass. It might be tied to the paid battle pass, I don't know. But there's gonna be less of these available for those of you who do not have as much finances. Okay, because that would just make logical sense, right? The other thing that was brought up in the live stream was the new 5-star selector. Now, Genshin Impact is a pretty easy game, so play whoever you want and get whoever you want. However, if you're a person that likes to improve their account over time and want to get the maximum improvement for your account, there is only one choice in this whole list that you should pick up, and that character is Dehya. The reason you should pick up Dehya out of a vertical investment account is because Dehya improves more than any other character in this list by constellations. So every copy of Dehya that you get can improve Dehya by C1 about 50%, 40 if you count a Bennett buff, but 50% if you're not, because that's most teams. It's about 60% or so for the C2 and for the elemental skill damage, by the way, because you don't really use Dea's burst until like C4. You can, but you don't really use it until C4. The C3 is whatever. The C4 allows you to use the burst at a super low energy cost, so now Dea becomes a main. You can use Dea at C2, but she requires like 160 ER at C2 to like maintain rotation, so you're still stuck on Emblem if you want to use that. The C2 doesn't do anything for you if you're going to go Emblem. So you start receiving a bigger bump for your builds at like a different constellation brackets. The C4 is the big constellation improvement because it allows Dea to be multifaceted. So if we look at the other characters, Keqing has such minor constellation improvements. It's like all under 10% for constellation. Same with all the other base banner 5 stars for the originals. The only other option is Tighnari. So Tighnari at constellation 0 is very, very good. And I very much like C0 Tighnari. But Tighnari's constellations, C0 through C5, he gets very minor improvements to his kit between C1 and C5. They're all very small tweaks. They're nothing even remotely close to what you get out of Dea constellations. So the reason to pick up Dea is because if you're looking for the biggest dramatic improvements to the character, everyone shits on Dea because C0 Dea is garbage for DPS, right? She's a defense character at C0 and no one wants a defense character. But once you get constellations of the character, there's a dramatic improvement to the character that you just really see, like, holy shit. So definitely pick that up if you're willing to, you know, go in. There's also a free weapon that's going to be coming out in Natlan that will, I believe, be the great weapon for Dea players. The Claymore, I believe, is very good on Dea. It also works on Kinich, I believe, too. So there's a lot of options. There's weapons finally in 5.0 that will work for Dea that are free to play friendly. So if you're more free to play and you don't want to summon for weapon matters, there's that. So that's good. Dea's got a lot more weapons since her release too. So you can use the Navia weapon and a bunch of other weapons. If you're wondering if Tighnari would be better picked up at C0, sure, you can pick up C0 Tighnari. That's fine. But once you get to C1, you'll be kicking yourself. I had somebody ask me earlier, if you're at C5 Tighnari, should you pick up C6? Well, if you are willing to do that and you want to pick up C6 Tighnari, as a person that has a $0 account, a probably Battle Pass Welcome account for 4 years, so maybe like $500 in a total account for whatever Battle Pass Welcome would be times 4 years, and a probably $50,000 or more account, there is no worse feeling that you can have as a player than having hundreds of standard banner wishes and not being able to get anything out of them. And there is no worse feeling as a player to summon on a banner and have a 5-star character be just Star Glitter. There is no worse feeling. It is literally the pit among pits. You feel like you're wasting money. I shit you not. Getting a C6 base banner character is so disheartening when you lose a 50-50. Because if you get C7 Chi-Chi, C7 Mona, oh my god, does that feel bad. It feels so terrible. You don't even get a small improvement to your account. You feel like you're just losing. Okay, losing the 50-50 is truly losing at that point. I know that many of you do not have that experience, but please don't pick up the C6 of a character out of this if you don't want that feeling within 1 month to 6 months from now, because that's probably what will happen to you and you'll hate it. But hey, if there's nothing else for you to get, fuck it. Next thing, the artifact strongbox system. When it comes to artifact strongboxing in Genshin, a lot of people will be using them for the sets that are missing. That might not be a good thing to do anymore. Okay, you can do that for like one piece that you're missing, but you might not want to artifact exchange too quickly. There is a big reason for this. It has been noted that there is a way to get better artifacts. The best way to get better artifacts now, apparently, is through the new system where we're able to craft the artifacts, right? So it takes 39 artifacts through the artifact exchanger for any player to get a chance at like a wall of decent artifacts, right? For something that's like 1 or 2. There might be something that comes out in 5.0 that allows you to get those sanctifying elixirs. And these sanctifying elixirs can be obtained by something regarding artifacts. So if you're saving for the strongbox in 5.0, I would put a pin in that and wait for a couple days to a week If you can't, you can't because you're at like 1800, but like put a pin in it because there might be a more efficient strategy in order to get the best 5-star artifacts that you want. I'm not 100% sure yet. I have to do some math on this one. You may not want to spend your artifacts that you saved up for the exchanger this year immediately. Now, a lot of people have been saving for somewhere between 3 to 6 months for artifact exchanger because they're just waiting for the next stuff because they had already saved everything. So anybody who was saving for the art exchanger at this point, save for a few more days, please. If you exchange your artifacts, there was a system that was shown inside the sanctifying elixir that had something to do with leveled artifact. And the sanctifying elixir, when we were watching it through the live stream, it looked like you were able to do minor affixes and major affixes, so it's a lot easier to get the ones that you need. So you get those crit rate, crit artifact. And when they showed this thing, it showed that there was an extraction that you can use on artifacts. Now, it looks like you can craft these things every so often. And if you are a more casual player that doesn't want to play Genshin that much and you feel like the artifacts that you got are bad, 5-star artifacts can be utilized for artifact XP. So if you wanted to feed your 5 or 4-star artifacts into other artifacts to get artifact XP, you could potentially do that in order to get the artifacts here. Now you can also do the +4 strat, eating a bunch of +4 artifacts in artifacts to +4 to find out a bunch of artifacts that potentially like just weren't good. And you could take those artifact XP and feed them into this sanctifying elixir process. I believe this was tabulated to be about 4 + 20 artifacts every 19 days. So I don't know how much you farm artifacts as a player, but if you were farming domains for artifacts, if you wanted to take the amount of time that it takes out of domain farming to farm 4 + 20 artifacts, you get 1 + 20 every 3 days. So that would take you a total of 12 days to get enough artifact XP just from the artifacts that are bad artifacts out of the domain farms. But seeing how you keep about half the artifacts that you level up in some capacity, that means that time frame would double, which means it would take about 24 days for you to get enough artifacts, which means there's going to be a break point where you're going to not have enough artifacts and artifact XP to do everything you want with the sanctifying elixir process. So if you are looking at trying to do this, there is a way for you to get around this problem. And the way to get around this problem is farming artifact XP routes on the daily, which for like 10 minutes a day. I have a whole video on that if you want to check out how to do it. And it takes about 10 minutes a day to do. And then you can use the art exchanger more frequently. But if you're not doing that, you might overlap with the amount of artifact XP that you are going to be utilizing here for both your artifacts that you want to level and the artifact exchanger. So I don't know if players will be able to utilize this without wasting a ton of really good artifacts, which will then be decreasing the amount your account can improve. So you can see it says time remaining on this cycle is 18 days, 9 hours. My guess is it could potentially be like once every 21 days. It could be also every 42 days. I don't know. It's not clear how long the extraction process is and how many times we can actually produce sanctifying, but we do know that apparently sanctifying elixirs are extremely rare, and the sanctifying elixirs are going to be requiring multiple of them to create different artifacts. So it's not one to create an artifact, it's multiple sanctifying elixirs to create an artifact. It costs 2 for a sans, and it costs 4 for a goblet. You can see on the live stream, and I believe it costs 1 for a plume. I'm assuming it'll cost the same for a headpiece. It'll cost 4 for a headpiece. Seeing how they cost a lot, you probably don't want to burn them immediately, and seeing how rare they are, they're going to be more rare than they are in Honkai Star Rail. So you probably want to save them even more so and be very, very stingy with your artifact XP so that you don't have to wait for extra time or destroy artifacts that you may have used for other characters. Just a tip, this might be something that you might want to look into. Don't use the artifact exchanger immediately. Try to figure out exactly what you need, etc. They're giving us a lot more artifact XP now through battle pass and other chests and stuff, so you might be able to get a bit more. I don't know, but with more artifact XP becomes more artifact leveling, and of course more artifact leveling you need to do more, and it means we need more Mora too. The other problem with this, of course, as I mentioned, was Mora. So if you're going to go through this process, artifact XP, I don't know if you can just exchange the bottles, and you might have to exchange the actual artifacts themselves. But every time you want to plus 20 an artifact from scratch, it actually, if you're taking out another artifact from plus 20 and feeding another artifact into another artifact, the amount of Mora is really low. It's only about 3,700, right? Yeah, 3,780 to feed a plus 20 into it. But to level it the full way up is over 200,000 Mora per artifact. So just know that you might be burning a lot of Mora while trying to do this. And the other thing is that a lot of the artifacts that you were feeding that didn't necessarily roll well, normally people would take these artifacts and then feed them into artifacts that could roll well. You won't be doing that anymore because you'll most likely be using them for the system. You'll be saving the +4, the +8, the +13 stuff, all that stuff for the new system artifacts. So you'll be losing a lot more artifact XP while also using more artifact XP. So it's just going to increase the amount of artifact XP that you're going to need per patch. So even if you do all this process, unless you're resin refreshing constantly, you're probably going to need to either start farming artifact roots, or you're going to have to do something different in order to make sure that you can accommodate that per account. The easiest possible solution is just doing the artifact roots daily, so that you have enough stuff for doing all that. But what that does to your account, by the way, is if you farm artifact roots daily and you keep farming more and more artifacts, it's going to make a huge dent in your Mora, because leveling artifacts, like I just mentioned, like 200,000 Mora. So using one of these sanctifying unctions is essentially 1,000,000 Mora cost. And that means if it's 1,000,000 Mora cost per sanctifying unction, that means to get a new goblet, it's over 4 million Mora in cost. So there is a big thing there. If it's 4 artifacts to plus 20, again, 4 artifacts to plus 20 for one of them, then it's 250,000 or more Mora, which is then 4 times 4 is 1 million Mora. And then if you need to then get 4 of them, 1 million times 4 million, 4 is 4 million. So these things are very expensive Mora wise. So don't not get the Mora out of the battle pass. Don't get the Mystic, always get the Mora. We're also going to be losing out on some battle pass stuff for Mora, or not battle, some weekly missions for Mora that I've heard. So there is going to be a decrease in Mora while some increase in Mora. So these things that we're getting are not free. So just make sure that you're on the lookout for them and trying to make sure that you get enough resources for your account. Otherwise, you're going to be burning through all resources way quicker than before. That's all I got. Don't do those things. Bye.